Hello, welcome to my YouTube and Facebook channels. I hope all of you are well. Today I'm going to solve the multiple choice questions of the chapter Presentation of Data. Let's get started. Which of the following represents the most accurate scheme of classifying data? The options are quantitative methods, qualitative methods, combination of quantitative and qualitative methods. A scheme can be determined only with specific information about the situation. The last option, a scheme can be determined only with specific information about the situation, is correct because the classification scheme depends on the specific context, purpose, and nature of the data, which can vary greatly and require specific information to determine the most appropriate approach. Which of the following is not an example of compressed data, frequency distribution, data array, histogram, ogive? The correct answer is data array. A data array is a collection of data elements stored in a structured format, but it is not a compressed form of data. Which of the following statements about histogram rectangles is correct? The options are: the rectangles are proportional in height to the number of items falling in the classes. There are generally 5 rectangles in every histogram. The area in a rectangle depends only on the number of items in the class as compared to the number of items in all other classes. All of these, A and C, but not B. The correct answer is the rectangles are proportional in height to the number of items falling in the classes. This statement is true and accurately describes a key feature of histograms. Why is it true that classes in frequency distributions are all inclusive? The options are: no data point falls into more than one class. There are always more classes than data points. All data fit into one class or another. All of these. The correct option is all data fit into one class or another. This statement is true because classes in frequency distributions are all-inclusive, meaning every data point is accounted for and fits into one of the classes. This ensures that all data points are captured and represented in the frequency distribution. When constructing a frequency distribution, the first step is divide the data into at least 5 classes. Sort the data points into classes and count the number of points in each class. Decide on the type and number of classes for dividing the data. None of these. The correct option is decide on the type and number of classes for dividing the data. When constructing a frequency distribution, the first step is to decide on the type, for example, equal width, unequal width, and number of classes that will be used to divide the data. This decision is important because it affects the accuracy and interpretability of the frequency distribution. The other options are steps that come later in the process. As the numbers of observations and classes increase, the shape of a frequency polygon, the options are: tends to become increasingly smooth, tends to become jagged, stays the same, varies only if data become more reliable. The correct option is tends to become increasingly smooth. This means that as the number of observations and classes increase, the frequency polygon will become a more accurate and realistic representation of the underlying distribution, with a smoother and more continuous shape. Which of the following statements is true of cumulative frequency ogives for a particular set of data? Both more than and less than curves have the same slope. More than curves slope up and to the right, less than curves slope down and to the right, less than curves slope up and to the right. The correct option is less than curves slope up and to the right because they represent the cumulative frequency of data points less than a certain value, and as the value increases, the cumulative frequency also increases, resulting in an upward slope. Additionally, the curve slopes to the right because it represents the accumulation of frequencies as the value increases. From an ogive constructed for a particular set of data, the options are: the original data can always be reconstructed exactly, the original data can always be approximated, the original data can never be approximated or reconstructed, but valid conclusions regarding the data can be drawn. None of these. The correct option is the original data can always be approximated. An ogive allows us to approximate the original data, but not reconstruct it exactly. From an ogive, we can estimate the number of data points within a certain range, but we cannot determine the exact values of the original data points. In constructing a frequency distribution for a sample, the number of classes depends on the number of data points, the range of the data collected, the size of the population, all of these A and B, but not C. The correct option is A and B, but not C, because the number of classes in a frequency distribution depends on the number of data points. The larger the sample size, the more classes you can have, and the range of the data collected. A larger range may require more classes to capture the variation.
Which of the following statements is true? The size of a sample can never be as large as the size of the population from which it is taken. Classes describe only one characteristic of the data being organized. As a rule, statisticians generally use between 6 and 15 classes. All of these. The right option is: as a rule, statisticians generally use between 6 and 15 classes. As a general rule, statisticians tend to use which of the following number of classes when arranging data? The options are: fewer than 5, between 1 and 5, more than 30, between 20 and 25. None of these. The right option is none of these.
Which of these is not a test for usability of data? Source: contradiction of other evidence, missing evidence, number of observations. None of these. The right option is none of these. A relative frequency distribution presents frequencies in terms of fractions, whole numbers, percentages, all of the above, both A and C. The right option is both A and C.
Graphs of frequency distributions are used because the options are: they have a long history in practical applications. They attract attention to data patterns. They account for biased or incomplete data. They allow for easy estimates of values. Both B and D. The correct option is both B and D. Continuous data are differentiated from discrete data in that discrete data classes are represented by fractions. Continuous data classes may be represented by fractions. Continuous data take on only whole numbers. Discrete data can take on any real number. The correct option is continuous data classes may be represented by fractions.